Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Today, we have a really amazing guest, so I'm going to let her introduce herself and how she got into surrogacy.
Yeah, it's nice to see you both. My name's Veronica, and I was a surrogate twice with North West Surrogacy Center.
How long ago?
Yeah, so I started my surrogacy journey in January of 2013. I have two kids of my own, and I was the VP for an international airline and quit my job after my second little one was born. The traveling life just wasn't for me. So I got into a really good nightly routine when I was a stay-at-home mom for a brief moment. And one of those things happened to be I'd put my kids to bed and then I'd watch a documentary. And one night I happened to watch a documentary about surrogacy in like the worst ways.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. Like I really enjoy being pregnant and I could really help another family. And I remember my husband walked in the room and saw me crying and he was like, oh, you're not watching that PETA documentary again. And I go,
Oh,
no, it's this thing about surrogacy and I love being pregnant and I want to do it. And he was like, yeah, sure. Okay.
oh.
He
Yeah.
kind of thought like, yeah, just like how you're going to learn how to scrapbook and crochet. And I was like, no, I'm doing this.
Right.
So the next day when my kids were taking their nap, I jumped on Google and I looked for a surrogacy agency. And I found Northwest really quickly. The parts of surrogacy that were really important to me were to make sure that I was legally protected. My biggest fear was I would be stuck with more children, and that is not what I wanted. And so Northwest was founded by lawyers, and that was really appealing to me. So I decided to fill out their application. And things moved really quickly. I mean, I had just had my daughter in June of 2012. And so my medical records were easily accessible for both of my children. I got them sent right over. I had an interview with Northwest and it all went really quick. I had, textbook pregnancies, which made me a really good candidate. At the time I was young, I'm a lot older now. But
You don't look it.
No, you don't.
So I filled out that application in January of 2013. I think it was like the very next day I had my first phone interview with the agency. Like it was really quick.
At this juncture, your daughter's like 6 months old, if I'm doing the
and
math.
she was actually still breastfeeding too. So, we had some time because you can't be actively breastfeeding when you start a medication cycle.
Sure.
But, my background check was cleared. I had a psych eval, did all those things, and I really jumped through the process quickly.
Okay.
And I was just matched with the most delightful family from Paris. And that was, really lovely. They were fantastic. It was that love at first sight feeling you hope for. I received their bio and I just went, yes, like I want to meet them. They're perfect.
Did you have a checklist of what you were looking for?
No,
you just
I
were
had
open?
zero. My only requirement was I wanted to be a surrogate for a family that could not have children without me.
Okay.
Fair.
But then in my very first interview with Northwest, they informed me because I had told them that, and they had told me that they only work with families that have a medical need for surrogacy.
Okay.
So that was also really important to me. So my first couple is gay and international, and they were fantastic. Our match meeting which is, a match meeting is when you have somebody from the surrogacy agency, yourself, and them all represented in a room. And we chatted, and they were absolutely lovely. They were also filming a French documentary about surrogacy. So that was kind of appealing to my husband and I. We thought, well, that'd be a really cool experience. We'd love to do that.
Yeah. Document it all. That's cool.
Yeah. They told us right away, they were like, but if this, inhibits you in any way, we won't move forward with the documentary. And I was like, no, I'd love to. That sounds great. So we were matched. I think we signed our contract in March, which is also when my daughter turned 8 months and I quit breastfeeding. And we had our first embryo transfer. Things were a little backwards, a little bit because of the documentary they were filming. They really wanted to capture everything with the film crew. And so they didn't have embryos created yet, which is a requirement for our agency now. Like you have to have embryos before you can have a match meeting.
Okay.
But they didn't yet. And so me they decided to do a fresh embryo transfer, which is also so rare. It's something you don't hear about anymore.
Yeah.
I
had those.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Yeah.
I had 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did a fresh embryo transfer, which took a little time because then me and the egg donor have to get our cycles synced up for that. And each father wanted to be a biological parent. And so the twins are actually half sisters. They are related through their egg donor. And the first embryo transfer took. So I became pregnant with twins, which was
very cool.
What I wanted. I mean, I was really looking to make this experience as different from my own pregnancies with my own children as possible. I thought mentally that would be really good for me.
So you weren't shocked like, oh, geez, it's 2. This is going to be a lot harder. You were like up for the challenge.
I was, yeah. I thought it'd be really cool. I'm really tall. I'm 5'9". And I thought, well, I've got plenty of space. I can absolutely handle this. And I did. My body felt great throughout that whole pregnancy. It was a really complicated pregnancy, but I felt really good and I was really healthy the entire time.
Good.
So the twins.
I was gonna say, what made it complicated? Was like your health compromised?
No, not at all. So, I had a subchorionic hemorrhage with the twins, which is super common in IVF. And I don't think in my opinion, I don't think fertility clinics talk about that enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when you have a perfect textbook pregnancy history, you've never experienced anything like bleeding during a pregnancy.
Right.
So I immediately thought I was miscarrying because it was so foreign to me. But I wasn't. It was a very large subchorionic hemorrhage though. And the fertility clinic had told me like, there's a good chance you will miscarry because of the size. So that was the first, like, you're going to go ahead.
About what week are we talking? Where
I was only like 6 weeks. I had not even had the heartbeat confirmation.
Oh my goodness. That's early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was bright red blood, which is also super rare because typically with the subchorionic hemorrhage, you're starting to bleed when it's really old blood. And I remember I went in because I just called the fertility clinic. I was like, I have to know what's going on. And they were like, fine, we'll do an ultrasound, but this doesn't count as your heartbeat confirmation. I was like, I don't care right now. I just want to, am I safe? Are they safe? What's going on?
Yeah.
And then they could see 2 little heartbeats. And I was like, does it count now?
Oh, so funny.
Yeah. So that was the first thing that it was like, well, your pelvic rest is going to continue and we're going to kind of put you on light duty. So don't lift anything heavy.
You have a little baby.
And I had a little baby that was more than, 10 pounds. And so then I was really grateful for my contract, which, really protected me because it was immediately necessary for me to have a nanny.
Yeah.
And I remember looking through that contract, like, I'm never going to need a nanny or housekeeping. Like, why are these things in here? And I ended up needing all of them.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful that my lawyer really stopped and made me pause and think about it and said, this contract is to protect you. If there's worst case scenario, you're going to need some of these resources. What would a nanny actually cost you? And let's put that in your contract. And I'm so glad I did. I ended up being able to hire Mary Poppins. I was a stay-at-home mom for a reason. I didn't want to have to send my children off to daycare. I wanted them home with me. So that's about when I started my nanny search. And then at the 12-week mark, well, a little before the 12-week mark, I passed my subchorionic hemorrhage, which had coagulated, like it had turned into a mass and it had all passed at once. And that was very scary.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking like softball size. It was really scary.
Were you at home when this happened? Like you were at home or like out or?
I was dead asleep. I was at home and I woke up and and there was never any cramping or anything. So it was really weird, confusing, but I ran to the emergency room anyway and they didn't know what to do with me. And they were like, I think we need to, at the emergency room, they're not
equipped for that, I guess.
They're not OBs. And so they thought, well, if you bled as much as you're telling us, we should probably do a D&C. And I was like, no. And it's like 11 o'clock at night, right?
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, you can do an ultrasound, but I'm going to have to go talk to my doctor. And they were like, fine, whatever you want to do, ma'am. So anyway, I left.
So scary. Oh my God.
And then at 12 weeks, we did the Nugel neck measurement.
What is that?
So it's a very specific test that they can do at it's like 12 to 13 weeks. They have this very small window where they can measure the neck space where your spinal cord would go. And it should be within a certain parameter. And one of the twins was very large. And at that point, I was seeing a perinatologist, which is, a step above an OBGYN.
Yep.
And because I was high risk because of twins.
Mm-hmm.
And they noticed some other little things at that point. The one twin that did have the nugal neck enlarged space also only had one umbilical artery. You should have two. And there just were some other little things that they were looking at. And so at that point, they informed the parents that they wanted to do an amnio, which you can't do before 15 weeks.
Right.
So that was, we kind of, now I'm trying to mentally process, like, what does an amnio look like? And how are you going to respond to the results?
Right.
For 3 weeks, you're holding your breath going, okay, what's this going to be?
100%. Yeah. So, at 15 weeks, I went up to my perinatologist and had the amniocentesis done, which I thought was fascinating. I mean, it didn't hurt at all. It was just so cool to be able to see, the babies like that. And it kind of felt special to be close to something that they touched, I know that it's amniotic fluid inside my body, but they're like pulling it out. I was kind of like wanting to touch the syringe, like that was just next to her. That's so cute. So they did an amnio on the one twin. And then we had to wait for the results. And at that point, she was a little more developed and they thought that there might be some club feet and that she wasn't opening her hands. And those were all indications of trisomy. So they were really concerned about that. And trisomy is fatal. There's no, it has a 0 survivability rate. And since there's twins, the doctor was really mentally preparing me for if these results come back, how they might, we're going to terminate that pregnancy to continue the healthy baby. And it was like, and it was the twin that was up high. There was one low sitting right on my cervix and one that was up high. And I was like, well, how do you do that when there's two and when the other one's blocking the exit? And that was kind of a graphic detail that I just had to, as a pregnant person, you're just thinking about that. Like, what does that look like on delivery day?
Right.
But the amnio came back and we're all on pins and needles. We're mentally preparing. I'm having lots of very heartfelt, emotional conversations with the parents who are all the way over in Paris and they're just trying to gather information. But her amnio results came back perfect. I mean, she was absolutely
amazing.
Yeah. On the way home though, from the amnio, her amniotic sac burst completely. There was no measurable amount of amniotic fluid around her.
And you're at 15 weeks?
And I was 15 weeks. Yeah. That was super scary. So at that point I was on strict bed rest, no showering, no nothing. And then kind of just waiting with like, well, what do I do now? And I had to wait a week and then I went and saw my perinatologist again and they could measure a little bit of amniotic fluid around her, but not much. And I really think that when it burst, because it literally burst, it fell on top of itself and it resealed, which I thought was just so fascinating. I mean, the human
body
is amazing.
Veronica, did you feel any type of sensation or like anything when it burst?
When it burst,
like, did your body release fluid? Like,
that's how I knew is, I mean, I was a block away from my house. My perinatologist is about an hour and 15 minutes from my home. I was a block away from my house. I turned the corner and I just felt this gush and I was like, oh, that's not good.
Right.
So, and, my whole family was very involved and invested and, wanting to be helpful and know what was going on.
Good.
But a week later, I mean, her heart was still beating and she looked good. And there was a measurable amount of fluid in there at that point. And she just kept chugging along. I mean, we were always on pins and needles with her, but did she
create more amniotic fluid as time went on, or was it just
she did? She did. And so, babies create amniotic fluid from swallowing any amniotic fluid that's in there. And then it, recreates and continues growing. And that's what she did, which was just fascinating.
What a will. of a
Yeah,
little fetus. What a will.
I know. It was
Wow.
really amazing.
That is.
And a result of that, her as she got older in womb, she was always measuring about 5 weeks behind her sister. So we knew that she was going to be a little bit smaller.
Okay.
But she just was so strong-willed. And when she was born, she was about an entire pound lighter than her sister, and she was
Okay.
visibly smaller, but she was absolute perfection. I mean, just
Aw.
a beautiful.
They say that under stress, babies under stress in the womb, they tend to develop a little bit like well quicker, or that stress in them, because I had triplets and that happened. The little girl was a whole pound less than her brothers, and she was the most healthiest because she was in the middle, and she just, there was a will. There was just a
Yeah.
will, and she
Yeah.
just developed like they did, but tiny.
Yeah. I think it's really cool though. So, at birth, the parents had told me the names and the meaning of the names. And we always joked that the reason why I stayed pregnant is because her sister was just right up against my cervix,
Yeah.
sending my body all these really positive pregnancy vibes, keeping me from going into labor.
Yeah.
So they named her Colombe, which in French means dove, symbol of peace. And I just thought that was really sweet. And then the twin that kind of had these complications, they thought of her as like this warrior that really just went through it all. And they named her Olympe, which is this French revolutionary powerhouse woman who just fought through all this diversity and came out ahead of everybody, which I just thought,
names.
what perfect names.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
when
you knew the
thought
names
them.
ahead of the birth? Did you
I
know the
did.
names? Okay.
It was
so you
the
could
only one. They only told me. They didn't even tell their parents or anybody else, but
Very sweet.
I got
Very
to
sweet.
know.
Veronica, how is your husband through this?
Yeah. Because you're on pelvic rest almost the entire, like from 6
Yeah.
weeks up, right? Like that's
Well, you
insane.
have to go on pelvic rest, 30 days before your embryo transfer as soon as you
True.
start.
That's true. So you were on it prior to, yeah.
Yeah, actually, so at 34 weeks, my perinatologist actually said, well, this is the point that we wanted to make you. So you're off all restrictions. Go live your best life. And I was like everything. And he was like, yeah, you could do all of it. And I was like,
Put that on tape, please. Yeah.
So my husband and I, went home and we had a great night, and I went into labor the next day, and I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
well, I know what caused that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So the parents aren't here, right? They hadn't come over
No.
yet. Okay.
No, we were all mentally like, they'll come at 36 weeks.
Okay.
I'm sure that's when they'll come. And then they came at 34 weeks and 3 days. So yeah, they got here in a couple days, and it was great. I mean, they were
C-section
little.
or vaginal?
I ended up having to have a C-section, and it was my first. That was my only hesitation carrying twins, is I really didn't want a C-section. But now that I've had one, I would flip a coin. It doesn't matter. Like, they both have pros and cons, and I didn't think a C-section was terrible.
They're just a little harder to recoup from, just because you've had that incision and
I found them easier because, there's not, I did. I mean, as far as that part, like,
okay.
Yeah, there's pain. There's different pain, but like, it was really nice to be able to go pee without it burning horribly, and those kind of things.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Okay.
Nicer. But yeah, I mean, they were born, the parents came. It was that beautiful moment that you hope when you just hand them their babies, and they were all cleaned up and a couple days old, and starting to get a little chubbier. I mean, it was wonderful. And before I even left the hospital after they were born, I actually called the owner of the agency, and I was like, when can I do this again? This is amazing.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, you need to recover. In 6 months, we'll talk about this again. And I was like, I can't wait that long. But I'm sorry, you had actually asked how my husband was doing.
Yeah.
And then I just went off on a tangent.
Oh, you are good.
But my husband actually was really reserved. He was very supportive of me. He was all about, if this is what you want to do and this makes you happy, I think you should do it. And you have my full support. But he was not convinced that the relationship that I developed with the parents would continue. I mean, he really thought that once they went home, we would never hear from them again. He didn't have the same, because, at this point we're telling each other, love you so much, have such a good day. This, can't wait for you to meet your babies and all of that. And my husband was like, this is not going to keep up. Like, they're going to get their babies. They're going to go home. We'll never see them again. And And I remember making him hold one of the twins before the parents came, and we're in the NICU with them. And in the NICU, you can't overstimulate babies. You have to hold them for an hour without moving. And so I made him hold one of the twins, and we're both in there doing our kangaroo time. And, my husband loves newborns. It's his absolute favorite. And my dad actually walked into the NICU and he looked at both of us and goes, "Don't get too attached." And I was like, "Dad, it's okay to love them. Like, everybody loves a baby. This is okay." But they ended up staying with my parents for 6 weeks after delivery. My mom is an ER nurse. And so she was like, "Come stay with us. We'll love it." And it was great for me because it was 20 minutes from my house and it just made everything really convenient.
And how very cool that they allowed your extended family into the NICU. Was that the parents saying, "Hey, they can come in," or was it just the hospital that you were in and they knew the situation?
It was probably more that my mom worked there.
Sure.
It was probably a little bit that,
Okay, gotcha.
You were breezy about all of it. But it also probably was, before surrogacy was as common as it is now. And I think that they were just incredibly supportive of our entire situation. From the very beginning, they were just, "What do you need? Is this too much time with the babies? Is it not enough? Like, what do you want to do?" And I was just like, "Well, until the parents get here, I want to be the one holding them. So come over."
When did the parents leave? So like you go into labor and do you call them like on your way to the hospital and then like they like try and hop a red eye or?
That would have been a fun story. No, they had their cell phones off. It was nighttime for them. It was daytime for me. And so we called them for 8 hours straight, and they kept their phones in the kitchen far away from their bedroom because they'd read all these studies about, cell phones in your bedroom are bad. Which I thought was funny. And I mean, that was probably the only time that my husband was really angry. He was like, "Why are they not answering? You are having their children."
Right.
Gosh.
Oh my God.
So they woke up and they saw like 800 phone calls from me.
Jesus.
And it's funny because I had been putting pressure on them because I love the parents. I mean, truly, to the bottom of my heart, I love them and they can do no wrong. But I had been telling them at like 32 weeks, I'm like, "Your guys' nursery isn't done yet. Like, come on, guys."
They're having twins.
And they were like,
"Yeah,
"It's fine. We're going to get to it." They don't move super fast.
Wow.
And so their nursery wasn't done. They'd actually planned on filming with the film crew that weekend that I went into labor, setting up the nursery. And the film crew actually walked in that day, the morning after they found out their girls were like 12 hours old. And they walked in and they're like hurriedly trying to put together their nursery and, build cribs and stuff. And the film crew was like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "The girls are here. They've been born and we have to get on a flight like right now." There's a law, there's some rule with their work though. Maybe it's the French government. So French families actually get 6 months of paid paternity leave, which is fantastic.
Oh, lovely.
But there are some stipulations to that. One of them being you can't start it on a holiday weekend. And it happened to be Easter weekend. So the girls were born on Friday, maybe Saturday. And because Monday was a holiday in France for Easter, they could not fly here until Tuesday. So I got to spend 4 days with the girls uninterrupted, which I thought I was the last thing I wanted, right? As a surrogate, I'll think about them being here for birth. And that
I would have loved it. Yeah.
In hindsight, like it was fantastic. Like I got these moments alone with the twins to just love them.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool.
Right. But my husband did, he really did put up this big barrier. And when they flew home, he saw that the phone calls kept continuing. I mean, especially that first month or two when they're calling every day and sending you all the pictures. And then I actually booked my first plane ticket to Paris. I went to go visit the twins for their first birthday, and my husband was like, "I missed out." Okay, so you guys actually are really bonded. And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of told you." And he was like, "I missed that." So when we started talking about doing surrogacy again, he was much more involved for the second journey.
Good.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a sibling journey. The second one was for someone else.
Yeah, it was. So my second couple is from Australia. My husband's only requirement was that they spoke English fluently.
Okay.
And
did the French people speak English?
Yeah.
One of them was completely fluent, but had a heavy accent. My husband really struggled with that French accent.
Okay.
But he spoke perfect English. The other one really spoke delightful conversational English as well. But he's a little more, I don't want to say sensitive to it, but he's a little embarrassed about his accent and his conversation English. But I understood everything he was saying. So he was great.
Okay.
Sorry. And so, yeah, it was my husband that really, he didn't care where in the world our second couple was from. He just wanted English to be their first language. And we were matched with another gay couple from Australia. And they are just absolutely lovely. We got matched with them very quickly. We absolutely adore them. They are some of my husband's very best friends.
How soon after delivery are you matching from the twins? Roughly.
It was, twins were born in April. I want to say it was in January again that I reached out and said, hey, I'm ready to do this again. And part of that is because I had done the Men Having Babies convention as a panelist in San Francisco with one of the owners from the agency. And I'd fallen in love with a couple there. And I was like, please let me carry their baby. And she was like, they're a long way away from signing with an agency, Veronica. They're just gathering information. And I was like, well, if this doesn't seal the deal that I definitely am going to do it again, then I don't know what will. So let's get the ball rolling. Because of the twins being born at 34 weeks, though, I had to, my medical process was a little deeper. So I got approved for a singleton, and I was more than happy with that. And so I carried a singleton for them, which I was thrilled with. But so I matched with them in January. And so they were originally from England, but they live in Australia. And so when I went to Paris for the twins' first birthday, they actually came down to Paris and met my first family, which was really great. It's cool. That feeling of working with more than one family, it almost feels like cheating. Like it's this it's hard to describe to people because you're not in a relationship with any of them like that, but you've gone through this really vulnerable and sensitive and emotional process together. So being intimate, so close with another couple like that, it feels kind of sad and wrong. And so I just thought, well, the best way to do this is we'll have you all meet and maybe you'll be friends. At least you'll know that they're good people that I'm carrying a baby for the second time around. And they were absolutely lovely. And I just adore them. And like I said, my husband just loves them. They're
so cool.
Some of our very best friends. And we do fun things with them. Like we vacation with them. We've been to Bali with them. We visited them in Australia. I just saw them in London. It's been great.
That's really rare. That's really cool. And I'm so glad your husband got invested in the second one. And he said, okay, they have to speak English. I want to be a part of it. That was it.
He just let himself like really fall in love this second time, and he just loves his Maya girl, which I think is, it's what you want, right? Like
you do want
these close, sweet, intimate relationships, and you want everybody to feel as important as they are.
Yep,
you do.
So that second baby is born. What, 2000 or
she was born in August of 2016. So I did have a failed embryo transfer with her or with her parents. Our first embryo transfer resulted in not even a chemical. I mean, it was just a flat fail. And so we took a little bit of a break, and it was also right around Christmas. And so we decided to do our second embryo transfer for them in January, right after Christmas. And she was born end of August of 2016.
Look at that. Nice.
Yeah. I want to go back real quick. So, because you have two children. One of them was really, really little, probably didn't even understand that mommy was pregnant. But the other one, how is it a boy? Is your first?
Yeah, it's my son Ace.
How old was he?
Ace was born in 2009, so he was 3, 4.
Okay.
When the twins were born.
Did he like understand the process of surrogacy?
Yeah, my daughter, very young, right? And she just noticed like one day she could sit on my lap, one day she couldn't, and then the time she could again. That was the extent of her understanding.
Yeah.
But I really took surrogacy as an opportunity for your children to learn about anatomy, human bodies, science, all of these really wonderful things, to include, other cultures and different languages. Like this was just, about human rights and how important it is, and so many wonderful things that kids can learn from this experience. And so I just took my son to every appointment with me, and I let him ask questions. I let him, help with the alcohol swab on my stomach before I'd get my Lupron shot. And, Lupron is such an easy medication to take. It's a tiny little insulin needle. It really doesn't hurt. I don't think you could screw it up if you tried. So I'd let him give me that shot, and I would explain what it's doing to my body. And, my biggest concern coming out of it was I genuinely think my son at that time thought babies are made in petri dishes. And if mom wants another kid, she takes a bunch of shots and she lays down for 24 hours and bam, pregnant.
Right.
Look at that. That's cute. Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah. So he totally got it. And it's something we talked about constantly. And my first couple came and visited all the time during the pregnancy. I mean, they probably came 4 times during that whole pregnancy.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow,
It was
that's a lot.
the luckiest.
Yeah.
And so he knew who they were too. And we would talk about it, like, whose babies are in mama's belly? And he'd be like, Bruno and Kristoff's. And I'm like, that's right. And
Aw.
why are we not having any more babies? And he was like, because we don't have another bedroom. And I'm like, that's right. That's the
Cute.
exact reason.
That's super sweet. So
Yeah.
did he get to meet the babies? Because you got to have alone time for 4 days, but I don't know if children are allowed in the NICU. Probably not.
The kids did visit me in the NICU, and they saw the children there. I mean, obviously my daughter Stella was way too young to be released in the NICU, but they did see me there and the twins. But like I said, they spent 6 weeks with my parents, and so they got to spend tons of time with the babies and the parents. And I feel like that's so important. I think kids have such a high intuition that they can just sense things, and they care. The Ace cared when I was pregnant with his sister, and he wanted, he was concerned about her and wanted to know she was okay. And it was the same with the twins. He just wanted to know that they were home with their parents and that everything was good. And he wanted to see the parents taking care of them, just like us as surrogates do, right? It's
right. Exactly.
just such an important part.
Yeah.
No, it's sweet. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the more that children can be exposed to at a young age, I think it's just only going to benefit them when it's
diversity.
Like the world. Like
100%. I mean, selfishly, there's a part of me that's so excited and happy that I now have family in these other countries. Right? I mean, just for spring break, just this year, I sent my kids to Paris to spend their spring break with Bruno and Kristoff. They stayed at their house. It was great. It was
so awesome.
Without you. Like they just went.
My mother went with them. She's also very close to them. I did not internationally ship my kids off without an adult yet.
Sure.
But it's gonna happen. I mean, what a perfect way for children to pick up a foreign language fluently.
Oh God, yeah.
Spend a summer in Paris.
Yeah.
Do the kids have the same relationship with the Australian couple? Do they visit there?
They haven't yet. Australia's a bit further away, but they would love to. My second couple, they actually had another baby after Maya was born, my last surrogate baby. And my agency was kind enough to match them with somebody that also lived 20 minutes away from me. So when they came up to pick up their baby boy, or for his birth, they spent six to 8 weeks here. They were here early for delivery, and they stayed super late after. And so, I mean, Maya spent a lot of time at my house,
Yeah, that's cool.
Aunt Veronica, and she loves Stella, and it was great. So my kids have definitely spent time with them, and it's fantastic. Really cool.
How did your pregnancy go with Maya then? The first transfer didn't take, second transfer did.
Yeah. So. It was the breeziest pregnancy I've ever had. I mean, I often forgot I was pregnant. It was great. I really, really enjoyed that pregnancy. Delivery is a different story. That was crazy, but
Are you with a high risk this time because you had the twins the first time, or are you just with the
Right.
normal? Okay.
Nope, I was just with a normal OB. It was
Okay.
super breezy. I decided to stick with a hospital different than the one I delivered my own children at. So I live in McMinnville, Oregon, which is about an hour south of Portland,
Okay.
and about 45 minutes north of Salem. So I decided to deliver in Salem, which was the same place the twins were delivered.
Okay.
And I had an OB there and they were great. But I actually, at 35 weeks, I was exactly 35 weeks, and I was in a meeting and I felt my water break. Like I felt it. And I immediately like waddle off and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely amniotic fluid. And so I went to the hospital and I told them, I said, my water broke, and they did 3 different tests and said, it's not amniotic fluid. You have a yeast infection. And I said, well, that very well may be true.
Right.
But this is amniotic fluid. Like, this is not my first rodeo. I am not some hysterical, like,
Right.
The sky is falling. I was like, I know what amniotic fluid looks like. I know what it smells like. Like, this is amniotic fluid. And they're like, nope, you're good. Go home. And it was August, right? Like it's August.
God.
And I said, if you send me home, I'm going to go out on my boat tomorrow. And they were like, that's a great idea. It's supposed to be 100 degrees. Go out on the boat. I was like, write this down on my chart. And they were like, done. Happy to do it. So I did the next day. And keep in mind, I will also say, I would not have gone if I did not have an ER nurse mother who was also out on the boat, right?
Okay. All right.
Just want to preface that. I'm not completely reckless.
We don't think you are.
But so I go out on the boat. I have it hooked up to my expedition. I have my golden retriever with me, my 2 children, my husband, my parents are in a separate car. And we go to this lake that's about an hour away from home, really out in the middle of nowhere. And I felt good. I wasn't gushing amniotic fluid anymore, and I really tried to listen. And, I had told the dads about it and they were like, well, it doesn't sound like it. And I was like, I think you guys should come anyway. And they were like, they were on their baby moon in the outback. So they had very limited cell phone reception. And they were like, we're going to finish up our baby moon and then we'll go ahead and fly in a week earlier than we'd planned. And I was like, I have covered my bases. I have told everyone everything. Yeah. I guess I'll just live my best life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
On the way to the boat, though, my daughter had seen this is 2016. So my daughter is 4, like just turned 4. And she had seen this ice cream stand and she was like, can I have an ice cream? And I was like, when we're leaving, I'll go get you ice cream, but let's go play on the boat and we'll go have fun. So we go out on the boat. We're in the middle of the lake. I am just living my best life, laying out on a floaty right next to the boat. And I felt one really hard, strong contraction. And I'm like swimming back to the boat and I'm like, we got to go. This is going to get worse. And my dad is like very serious, but very calm under pressure. And he's like, everybody in the boat, let's collect all the things. And I am like, it was the most painful contraction I've ever had. That was different. I could still feel her moving though. And I was like, well, maybe we got some time. I don't know what's going on, but I definitely need to go to the hospital right now. Yeah. And contractions are really consistent. Like they're 2 minutes apart, lasting for 2 minutes at this point.
Oh crap.
And I mean,
you're how far from a hospital? Wait a minute.
An hour away from the closest hospital, an hour and a half away from what's supposed to be my delivery hospital.
Right. Wow.
And I got to the boat dock and I have my golden retriever and it is 100 degrees outside and it is black asphalt. So I'm worried about my dog burning her feet. And I have my 4-year-old and my husband's trying to wrap up everything. But I also forgot that I didn't communicate well that I was having contractions consistently and that I was in a lot of pain. I just said, I had a contraction. We need to go. Right. And so everybody just responded. So I have my daughter by her hand. I'm holding my golden retriever, who's like 10 years old at the time, because I'm afraid of her burning her paws. At least my daughter has shoes on. Yeah. And my daughter is like, she is seeing us walk right past the ice cream stand. Ice cream. I promised her. And I am dragging her, holding my dog, heavily contracting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst day of my life. And I get them all in the car. I turn on the expedition. And I'm backing up the boat, the boat thing to load the boat up. Right. And my husband finally loads the boat up and I go, we have to go to the hospital right now. I'm driving. And I go, but you have to stop and get Stella ice cream first because I promised her. He runs over, he gets both the kids ice cream. My son is with us too. everybody's ice cream, and now my husband's in the passenger seat timing contractions, and I'm like, okay, go.
And you're driving.
Yes,
You're
because
driving.
I wanted to drive. I needed something to focus on.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
that's fair. Okay.
get it.
knew I was in labor. I knew this was inevitable. And if I had been in that passenger seat, I would have been a very angry in labor.
And anxious. Yeah. Got it.
And
got
anxious.
it.
And,
Right.
you know, just like you couldn't
Wow.
avoid that pothole. Come on, buddy.
Yeah.
So I was driving. And by the time we entered McMinnville, I could no longer keep my eyes open during contractions. So I'm bearing down and closing my eyes.
Oh.
Also stepping on the brake. I'm sure the people behind us thought we were crazy. And I'd called my brother along the way and I was like, hey, I need you to meet me at Willamette Valley. I think I'm going to have a baby right now. And I need you to get my boat and my dog and my kids and take everybody home. And my parents had gone straight to my house waiting for my car to arrive so they could help unload it.
Okay.
So my husband had come in with me. My brother took my vehicle, went back to my house. It's me and my husband, and I waddled into the birthing center in a bikini.
Oh,
Sure.
And
that's a sight.
yeah, that's what you do. And I remember like holding my belly as it's contracting and going, do you guys do VBACs here? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I am ready right now. We got to go. And so they, you know, and I'm leaking amniotic fluid as we're walking, like very obvious amniotic fluid. And they're like, yeah, she's probably ready. And so I get in the hospital bed. They finally check me. I'm covered in lake water, right? Like I'm swimming. And they check me and they're like, you're only at a 3, but we're monitoring the contractions. Like they're not stopping. They're not letting up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I only at a 3? I thought for sure I was at a 10.
Right.
And her heart rate was elevated, probably because I also had chorioamniotitis, which is what happens when they warn you about with getting an infection in your placenta.
Right.
Because my water had broken the day before, and I had been in a lake, and lake water had entered a sterile area of your body.
Oh my God.
Her heart rate was elevated, and they were like, I think it'd be safer if we just did a C-section. And they debated on transferring me by ambulance to Salem, and they were like, because they don't have a NICU, the hospital is too small to have a NICU.
Right.
And so they waited until my children's pediatrician could come in and be there.
Okay.
And if it had been my child, I probably would have said, why don't you just give me some Pitocin and let's speed up this, my cervix getting bigger. But because it wasn't, I'm listening to medical advice and I'm doing as they say,
and with the infection too, you're kind of like that's another level.
Well, we didn't know there was an infection in all fairness. It's something they sent the placenta off to pathology afterwards to confirm.
Okay.
But then I also started running a fever and it was like, yeah, we should probably speed this up. So we were just waiting on the pediatrician. He showed up and it was the chillest C-section ever. It was a very quiet, calm room. It was warm. The doctor was explaining everything as he was doing it. And my husband did not see the twin C-section. My mom came in with me for that.
Okay.
And I'm begging him, like, can you please look? Can you please look? And he's like, I don't want to look. I don't want to do it.
Poor guy.
And I was like, I want to know what she looks like. Like I've been dying for 9 months because I know what my kids look like. They're going to look just like my husband, just like the other one did. Right. But, their egg donor was Jamaican, half Jamaican, half Filipino. And these are super pasty white guys from London that were hoping that their kids wouldn't get sunburned in Australia. So I'm like dying to see what she looks like.
I bet she's beautiful. Oh, we saw her. Yeah, she is beautiful. Yes.
Gorgeous. But it's just, it was the calmest C-section ever. She came out, the pediatrician looked at her and she was born at 34 weeks, 2 days. And, she came out and she was just absolute perfection. She required no NICU time. She was ready. They said if it wasn't an embryo transfer, they would have thought she was a 37, 38 weeker.
Wow.
Yeah. Both of us were discharged after 36 hours.
So parents aren't there yet, or are they?
They're not. I did call them. They did answer the second I called.
Good.
So where does baby go? Does she come with you?
Yeah. Well, so they made it. They made it to Oregon within 24 hours.
Kudos.
And one of the dads came. The other one, had to wrap up life that was happening. And he made it to the hospital. He had broken his cell phone on his honeymoon or on his baby moon. So he did it without a cell phone, without navigation. He found the McMinnville Hospital. He walks in and I'm like, hey, everything's here. Here's your baby. Looks just like him. I mean, they're twins.
Oh my gosh.
His phone's broken. He lands. He has not slept at all, clearly. I mean, because the last thing he heard, because he doesn't have a phone on him, is they're doing an emergency C-section because her heart rate is elevated. He got on a plane. He knows nothing. So he said that he was like crying the whole flight over, thinking his baby has a heart condition. I mean, it was just, and then he walks in and we're like all packed up. Baby's done car seat test or hearing test. We're just waiting on him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's your perfect baby. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's great. I love her. You know, it was magic, that magic moment we all wait for.
Yeah.
But she was lovely. And we took a village approach to raising her. We actually all just moved into my parents' house after that delivery.
There you go.
Including me. And we all just, I mean, he was exhausted.
Yeah.
He had not slept in like 48 hours. So after he'd gotten all the snuggles and we all said our good nights and he put Maya to bed, he was just out. And I'm so glad I stayed there that first night because I heard her crying and he would have woken up. I mean, he is just a phenomenal father, but you know, I heard the faint cries and I just walked into his bedroom and I was like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna nurse her. She's clearly hungry. You clearly need sleep, but it was great.
How long until other dad gets there, or does other dad not come?
It was just a couple days. No, it was like 4 or 5 days. And then he came and they just were a blissful little family. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was great.
And
did they ask you to do a sibling journey and were you not cleared or did they just,
I was not cleared. We all, I mean, I went into that journey expecting to do 2. I knew they wanted 2 children. They had told me from the start, they were hopeful to do it with the same surrogate. And I was too, you know, it's something that I don't know how frequently it's talked about, but like that devastation of not being medically cleared to do a journey that you really thought you would get is heart-wrenching.
It's a loss. It's a loss. You're mourning a lot. Yeah.
It is. And you know, people think, you know, maybe it's about the money or no, it's like, these are my people. I birthed their first child. Like it's hard to articulate those emotions that you put into it. But it took me a solid year of, and at this point, I'm also working for the agency, right? So I'm talking to women about surrogacy and this amazing experience, and then I'm denied. Yeah. And it took me a solid year of like really mourning it and letting myself just grieve that, to be like, I'm done being pregnant. Like this was a good call. And I totally respected the decision. I really did. You know, not every 35 weeker is going to be as strong as she was. And, you know, there's a reason I was disqualified and that's okay.
Yeah, it is. And your health's important too. You need to be here for your babies that you're raising.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. And your husband, like for heaven's sakes. Okay. You dabbled there where you said, at this point, I'm working for the agency. So how does that kind of segue?
Right. Like that. And it's a dream job, right? I think every surrogate hopes that they can work for an agency. And I mean, we never see jobs posted or, you know, it just seems like the mythical unicorn. Like how do you work for an agency? So after my first journey and after we'd filmed this documentary, I actually went to my agency and I said, look, we need a support group for women. Because when I was going through the process, I remember asking like, hey, which one of you has been a surrogate? And they were like, nope, none of us. And I was like, well, I really would like to talk to some surrogates about this. And they were like, we can put you in contact with another surrogate if you want to talk to somebody. And I was like, it's not what I was looking for. And so I talked to the agency and I said, I want to run a support group for surrogates, like this in-person meetup where anybody that wants to connect can come. And they were like, yeah, if you want to do that, go ahead. And so I started running just a monthly meetup in just Portland, Oregon. And, you know, the first one, like 1 person showed up. The second one, like 3 people showed up and it just kept growing. And then people in other cities were like, hey, they're doing it in Portland. Well, can you come down and do it in Salem or Eugene, like these cities that are further away? And I was like, yes, I would love to. So at that point, I was a contract employee with my agency, and just kind of traveling around doing support groups for surrogates. And then it grew into doing some recruiting events for potential surrogates. And then it was growing into like doing events, like our annual appreciation party for our surrogates and helping plan that, which my I have another background in event planning, so that was a perfect segue for me. I
Oh
was
my
happy to
gosh.
do it.
Yeah.
And it just the job just kept evolving, but it was really probably, I mean, 3 years of me being a contract employee before they said, you know, we want to hire you full time as our intended parent concierge, along with everything that you're doing now. And I was like, perfect.
Wow.
This is
Very
my
nice.
I'd love to do it. And so, yeah, I've been a full-time employee with the agency for about 6 years now.
Good for you. And then your kids were older, and so it made sense to have
And
work.
that was it, is like all of these things kind of fell into place because I really, you know, I'm lucky enough that I was able to be a stay-at-home parent for my children. That was really important to me. And I did go back to work after the twins were born, but super part-time, like 4 hours a day, just while my daughter was at preschool.
Yeah.
And by the time I started working full-time for the agency, both my kids were in elementary school full-time.
Right.
So, and I work from home.
Yeah.
That was one of my contingencies. I was like, I hate to kind of ask, but I can't travel up to Portland to go to the office every day. I still have to pick my children up from school. Like, this is important. And
Right.
the agency's just been lovely. I mean,
That's great. That's
yeah,
really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Really
kind
cool.
of a dream job.
Yeah.
Where is Northwest Surrogacy Center located?
That's a great question. So our headquarters is in Portland, Oregon. We also have an office in Seattle and an office in Sacramento, San Francisco.
And do you
Okay.
guys accept surrogates from every state, or I mean from every state that is surrogate friendly? Let me phrase it that way.
Not every state that's surrogate friendly. So we work with, you know, obviously we started in the Pacific Northwest, hence the name Northwest Surrogacy Center. But we work with surrogates in Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, and then like a handful of states in the Northeast.
Okay. So it's mainly Western.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Got it.
Very
So
cool.
how many, I mean, just funs, kicks, and giggles, how many babies? What are we in 2023? Yeah. How many babies are going to be this year?
Oh,
With the
this year, we actually just had our 100th baby this year, which is crazy.
That is crazy because it takes 9 months
Congratulations.
to have a baby, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this year we're on track to have 168 babies born
Oh my
for 2023.
That's
And
amazing.
pre-COVID, we also don't do twins anymore. We don't allow double embryo transfers.
Okay.
Science is just so advanced and so great
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's no need to implant more than one embryo at a time.
Right.
For the safety of the surrogate too, right? I mean, twin
Yes.
pregnancies are hard and they're hard on the babies.
Yeah.
But
Do you allow tandem journeys if they want two
Yeah.
surrogates at the same time? Okay.
yeah, so we call them twibbling journeys. We do twibblings.
I
Okay.
like that better than tandem. I
That's
like
really cute.
twibbling.
Twibbling.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that is a popular option, and we do have a lot of families that decide to do that. But before COVID, we were averaging about 200 babies a year, and now we're at 168.
So you're getting back up there. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you just-
It's not a number that we're trying to, you know,
Yeah. crush. Right.
100%. We
Right,
have
right.
lovely families, and we're really hoping, you know, our goal is to make this a really enjoyable experience for really lovely families. You know, we're really
Yeah.
selective about who we choose to work with.
Are you? I love that.
How
Okay.
how does your matching process go? Like who gets whose profile?
First.
It depends on a couple different factors. Typically, the intended parents get a surrogate's profile first.
Okay.
And then if they say yes, then the surrogate would get their profile. And if she says yes, then they move forward. But there's some instances where a surrogate will get the intended parent's profile first to see if
Okay.
they're a good match.
Yeah.
I think our agency, I jokingly say that Northwest is like the best dating service on the planet. Like, they take matching so seriously, and they want to make sure that this is a really enjoyable, respectful relationship. I mean, no part of our agency practice is having transactional surrogacies. That's just not what we're about. We're really trying to set people up for success, and communication and respect mutually between each other is so important for this process to be successful.
It is.
Yeah.
You guys are a rarity. It's interesting that you said you're choosy for who you pick. I'm assuming choosy for surrogates and choosy for intended parents.
Yeah.
But in the end, that choosiness and that maybe extra level is protecting all parties and is allowing it to be a safe space, allowing it to be a communicative space and for a relationship to grow. Because there's so many that just don't work out. Like, and I'm not bashing agencies, but it's like we just talked to someone. It's like once the heartbeat, you get the heartbeat confirmation, and kind of the agencies pull aside, and then the couples and the surrogate are on their own, and that's when you need more of the assistance. And
I
more,
totally agree.
right?
I mean, and our agency is set up so you have a dedicated case manager. It's the single point of contact throughout your entire journey for both the intended parents and the surrogate. And really they're doing these monthly check-ins, and it's not required. Some surrogates are like, I'm busy, like I don't have time for this. It's like, cool, I'll send you a quick email. If you need something, let me know.
Okay.
But really the goal is to really be there and show support. It's not, we're working with adults. They don't need us to hold their hand at the fertility clinic or see them in person all the time, but just to let them know, like, we're here, we know you're doing something absolutely amazing and we appreciate you for doing it. Let me know if we can help.
Right. And then if they do reach out to help, they're not frightened to, I should say. They know that it's a safe space, and they know that they can get, even if it's the smallest, simplest little question. First time surrogates, it's a lot. It's a lot, and you don't know how to navigate.
Right. And not every surrogacy is the same either. We are doing surrogacy multiple times. We have so many surrogates that come back to do multiple journeys.
Great.
And I mean, I think that speaks volumes, right?
It does. Totally speaks volumes.
I think almost like 30% of our surrogates are repeat surrogates at this point.
That's phenomenal.
That's great.
Yeah.
We don't have the exact percentage, but
that's a lot. But that's a third. That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
To you guys, because seriously, that's not the norm out there.
Isn't that sad? Like that makes me sad. This is such an intimate process, and having that human factor in there, having real people that are really excited for you and connected to your process, or that are there to support if things don't go as planned, is so vitally important.
Yeah.
Exactly. Gosh.
How long does it normally take to match?
For a surrogate?
Yeah, because I know IPs are longer, especially nowadays. I'm hearing that it's even longer of a process because there just becomes more and more IPs, and surrogates aren't really, we're not multiplying.
It takes 9 months. The surrogate's tied up for a year, and 9 months to a year plus, because she can't come back. Yeah.
So for intended families, I'm just looking up some of my quick stats. Right now, our wait list for intended parents is between 7 and 12 months. And a lot of that depends on the fertility clinic that you're working with.
Okay.
But we're seeing an average of about 8 to 9 months.
Okay.
And for surrogates that are going through the process, really the only big holdup is waiting for those medical records, right? We have to get those, and that can be a really challenging, long process. But if you can get those quickly, we can see surrogates through the process with their background check, their social worker home visit, all of those pieces, their interview with the agency. They can really get through in about 3 months if we can get those medical records quickly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You mentioned something, social worker home visit. I had one of those. I did 3, right? I had one of those, and the first 2, they didn't do that. So, I mean, I know why people do that, but is that something most agencies are doing now? Is a social worker home visit to kind of see what the environment is, or is it something that Northwestern chooses to do?
I haven't heard of, I don't know what the other agencies do. I've never worked with another agency.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But every single one of our surrogates has a background check done. And every adult living in her home also has a background check done.
Great.
And they're doing a social worker home visit. And it is to make sure that the living environment is safe. And a hospitable environment for being pregnant in safely, right?
Yeah.
And then they're also having a psych eval. That's a requirement as well.
Do your IPs have a psych eval too, or just your surrogate? Yeah. Okay.
We do.
Okay. Excellent. That's great.
A question that comes up kind of often, especially for repeat surrogates. Some agencies cap off compensation. So like, even if you're on your, 4th or 5th one, your compensation won't go up higher. Do you guys cap it off? Do you guys have like a first time this, second time that, or can a surrogate what I'm seeing more common nowadays is a surrogate can come in, especially who's a repeat, and say, okay, I've done my research and I think I'm worthy, or I think I'm worth this. And I deserve this or whatever.
Right. No, that's a good question. So we do have a cap. We first-time surrogates have a base pay. The base pay for the state of Oregon, for all of our states, have the exact same base pay, because one surrogate is not more valuable than the other, right? Except for California, because the cost of living is insanely high in California, which everybody can agree to. So our base compensation for surrogates is $40,000, and then repeat surrogates earn an additional $10,000. But there's also so many other benefits that I think a lot of agencies don't have. And I'm sure that you get surrogacy ads, right? You see them and you see these huge numbers thrown out there, like earn $100,000 working as a surrogate. And you're going, how is that?
How?
But we do have things like a wellness benefit. We have a counseling benefit. We have maternity clothes, obviously, lost wages. I mean, there's all these, we have a monthly miscellaneous. There's all these really wonderful benefits for surrogates. So a first-time surrogate in the state of Oregon, on average, compensation, she's getting about $55,000. But all of those numbers are the same for all of our surrogates, except for California, who gets a little bump up because it's California. But every single one of our surrogates, it doesn't matter if, you're a repeat surrogate just for the second time, or it's your fourth journey, your value is the same. Like this is, at some point it becomes an ethical issue, I think, when surrogates are going in there going, wait, I've done this 3 times. I know I'm a pro. So I'm going to say $100,000, because there is an obligation to have a fair compensation for intended parents too, right? At some point it feels almost like you're taking advantage of people in really desperate situations. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel good morally.
Gotcha.
No, I understand that. Surrogacy is already expensive, and everybody, everybody's compensation is always one of those interesting conversations to have with anybody in the industry. With anybody.
It is, and it's a conversation I'm always happy to have. It's weird how in the last 5 years I've seen a massive shift in what that compensation conversation looks like. Because 5 years ago it was like, I bet you're only doing it for the money, and if you really wanted to, you should just do it for free, and like, how dare you take money? And in the last 5 years it's like, I wouldn't do it for less than 200,000, and it's like, how did this mindset switch so fast?
Right.
And I also just want to go back to what you said, like when you see surrogacy ads that are like, oh, you can make, I've seen a surrogacy ad in California that says $150,000. And I'm like, okay, but you're probably having a hysterectomy. You're probably having multiples. You're probably getting all these tests done that aren't technically necessary. But in that case, like
they also probably, the biggest one I think is when they include like that they'll pay for health insurance for you. And so they take what the health insurance is monthly.
Right.
And consider that part of your comp. And it's like, no, that doesn't
count. Different.
That's not money in my pocket. That doesn't count.
Right. Exactly.
Your journeys were just, even though they had some quote unquote complications there, some crazy like highs and lows, they're beautiful to listen to, the stories. They really are. You can truly tell how much you love both of those couples and all of those children. It's so cool. You can just, it exudes from you. Like Northwest is very, very lucky to have you. And it just kind of happened. Like, I firmly believe things line up or people meet for certain reasons. And you got to have good people in this industry to keep getting good people in this industry. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you. I think about that all the time, like how much my life really did just completely pivot and change from being a surrogate. It wasn't, so much of our life was impacted in a positive way from me doing surrogacy just that one time. And the second time it was even more impactful. And I think there's some really fun conversations that you can have and that should be talked about more. Like, I want to celebrate, like, what did you buy with your compensation? Tell me all about it. I'm dying to know, like,
that's cute.
And we talk about that in our surrogate Facebook group, which is just for NWSC surrogates. And we have like 900 women in there, which is, and it is the most like supportive, loving.
That's so nice to hear.
About 900 women that
are
kind of going, either pregnant or on hormones or delivered recently. And to have that environment, I think is just speaks kind of volumes about the amazing individuals that are choosing to have children to help another family. But it's something that I love to celebrate in there when women are jumping on there going, we just paid off all of our student loans and this feels so good. Or we just bought our, family car and paid cash and that feels so nice. And
it does.
For the more exciting things like I'm getting a boob job and a tummy tuck and You know, like that's exciting. Tell
That
me
is
about it.
exciting.
Yeah.
That is exciting.
That's awesome.
Yes, I love it. I love to, I mean, because I did surrogacy and I loved it and I grew up with it and like I did it for all the right reasons, but I was also a single mom and it benefited me and I did it and now I have a house and I bought my
Right.
house with my surrogacy compensation and
Yeah.
it's in California as a single mom. So like I
Amazing.
think that as a huge win.
That's
Yeah.
a massive win, isn't I mean,
Yeah.
like I love that. It's just
Yeah.
fantastic. We took our compensation and we started a business. Like my husband has his own shop now and you know, that's super cool.
It
It
I
is.
also,
He's his own boss. I love it. Yeah. That's
yeah,
I
cool.
love it. I
great.
love it.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question. So, does Northwest, what are Northwest views on non-traditional births and doulas? Because doulas are becoming like a big thing nowadays.
Right. So actually all of our surrogates do get they get money for a doula. So
Nice.
they have a $1,500 allotment in all of their contracts to use towards a doula if they wish.
Okay.
As far as non-traditional births, do you mean just like not hospital births?
Yeah, I hear like people like are like people want to do home births, but I know that those are liabilities. So like I've seen like common ground going to like a birthing center and like
That's
stuff.
like attached to a hospital that's overseen by an OB.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like stuff like that.
Yeah. So our rule is you can see a midwife, but there has to be an OB overseeing it.
Okay.
We have had some instances where intended parents also really want a birth center experience.
Mm.
And so we've allowed a couple of those, but that's so rare. And I think that that's what's hard is you do have to, if you've only delivered and done home births, I can understand how scary the thought of a hospital birth would be, right?
Yeah.
But it's their baby.
Right. I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
And
You have to
their
make sure
child.
that everything is going to be safe for everybody.
Right.
100%. And on top of that, it's, you know, we're only working with families that have a medical need for surrogacy. And
Right.
oftentimes that also means a lot of trauma has happened in the past.
Yes.
And I tell people this all the time, like surrogacy is nobody's first choice. It's everybody's last choice.
Right.
This isn't,
Yeah.
so we're working with a lot of emotions and a lot of anxiety for very good reasons. And so we
Yes.
just need to make sure that everything's super safe.
I like that.
Yeah. No, it's very reasonable. Absolutely. I only recently have I heard of like surrogates going to birthing centers because, and I think that was just, I think that was just kind of like due to COVID because like I think parents could come and it was easier for that during that time. And but now people are like, yeah, let's do it. I like hospitals, but
Man, I would have had my last keeper kid. I would have had her at home if I could have. That was just such an easy birth.
Aw, nice.
That's great.
I should have just stayed home, but alas, I have an emergency room mother, like I said, and she was like, you go to the hospital right now. I know
Right.
this can go bad. Go.
Right. We know way how stuff can go wrong fast. Yep.
Yeah, you
Right.
can, you can.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
we have 2 lives.
so if somebody wants to apply to Northwest, where do they go? Yeah.
Great
Website.
question. So you can follow us on Instagram, Northwest Surrogacy, or it's at NW Surrogacy Center. Or our website is the best place to get started. And it's just loaded with really good information. So www.nwsurrogacycenter.com. You can get all sorts of information, testimonials from families and surrogates, and fill out an application.
Amazing. So then, is there any way that somebody, if like they're ready to go, like can they like help speed up the process? Like we were talking about medical records. I know sometimes agencies will be like, yeah, you guys can send us your records. We're still gonna have to request them. But like if a surrogate were to send you over their records, would it help move things along?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have your birth records, the hospital delivery records, and your obstetric care records, grab them, send them over to us. We would love to see those.
Okay.
And the other thing you can do is, you know, there is still kind of a backup with just normal OB doctors getting your annual checkup and pap smears and stuff. Go ahead and schedule that too. But
Yes.
please, under any circumstances, do not stop or remove your birth control.
Oh,
That is important to say. We have
right. Oh my
seen
God.
people try to be proactive and like, oh, I'm just going to go get my IUD removed now. Please don't. Like,
Right.
wait till you're further along in the process.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. We don't want any whoopsies
Right.
happen.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well,
Yeah. This has
thank
been
you so much,
delightful.
Veronica.
Yes.
Like honestly, and your stories are just
I loved it.
phenomenal and
Yeah.
like poster, just
It gives me like a happy
Wonderful.
feeling, warms and fuzzies. I'm like, just like, this is so fun. Like, I want them all to be like that, Veronica.
I
All of them should be
know.
like that.
Well, we do need like really honest representation though, right? So I think it is
Yeah.
important. And you guys are doing the really good work, like talking to people that have really struggled through some parts of this.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
think it is important. But I really love both my journeys. I love my families. I love the 3 little girls I got to bring into the world. And my family loves them too.
That's
It's
awesome.
amazing. Yeah, the bond that you guys have created as a family with the family that you helped grow. It's just extended family. And I think that that's what surrogacy, I think that's what a lot of surrogates look for out of
They
surrogacy.
want it.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, they're also trying to mentally prepare for that not to happen. But when it does happen, it's like
It's a whole nother level.
It's
Whole nother level. Yeah.
wonderful.
Magic.
It is cool.
So it's
Well,
really
thank
nice
you
to hear the stories
so much
that end
for taking
like
the
that.
time. I know that took a long time. I know it did. And we appreciate it so very much.
No, I'm happy to chat with you guys anytime. If there's
Oh,
anything you
sweet.
ever want to touch on in the future, just let me know.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Well, thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. She's just so wonderful.
Amazing.
I feel like everyone that comes on is so wonderful, and I feel like I feel like I'm like a broken record when I say that when they leave, but they
Well,
are. She's just wonderful.
They're wonderful for different and various reasons. Some of them overlap, but then like her journeys, her life just, I mean, a VP of an international airline, and then
It's the
stay-at-home
perfect
mom.
domino effect situation. Like, and it's just, and
She's-
her journeys are just
I
wonderful.
really just feel like some people are drawn into this for the very, 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 very right reasons. And I
Yeah.
feel that her journeys kept continuing, and she had the gumption and the know-how. Hey, we need a support group.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go ask them if I could do that. And she was a contractor for a long, long time
Yeah, she was.
before they pulled her on as full time. So it's not something like she said, like you can go look at the want ads. It's something that has to be in your heart, and you have to be super, super passionate. And just
Absolutely.
talking to her for like 1 second, she's
Yeah.
super, super passionate.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we so appreciate you coming on. So thank you so
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you very much. Well, if you guys have any questions or would like to share your story, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Stop.Sit.Surrogate.
It's been another episode of Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Take care, everybody. See ya.
Bye.